Section 1. You will hear a conversation between a clerk at the help desk of a transport and travel agency and a woman who is asking for travel information. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Good morning.
Good morning, madam. How can I help you?
Well, I'd like to get to Camden Town from Highgate Village tomorrow before 10 a.m.
Did you say Highgate Park or Highgate Village?
I said Highgate Village from Camden Town.
You sure?
Yes, I should know where I'm going.
Right. So Highgate Village from Camden Town.
No, sorry. I should have said Camden Town from Highgate Village.
Well, that's what I thought you said. And how are you planning to get there, by bus or train?
The woman wants to go to Camden Town, so Camden Town has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good morning.
Good morning, madam. How can I help you?
Well, I'd like to get to Camden Town from Highgate Village tomorrow before 10 a.m.
Did you say Highgate Park or Highgate Village?
I said Highgate Village from Camden Town.
You sure?
Yes, I should know where I'm going.
Right. So Highgate Village from Camden Town.
No, sorry. I should have said Camden Town from Highgate Village.
Well, that's what I thought you said. And how are you planning to get there, by bus or train?
Oh, it doesn't bother me which way I travel, as long as I get there sooner rather than later.
Well, if you take a fast train, you'll get there in under an hour. Now, there's a King's Cross Express train leaving the station at 8:30 from platform 9. How does that sound?
Great. Which station does that leave from?
King's Cross. It's the railway station nearest to you.
Did you say King's Crossed?
No, King's Cross. That's C-R-O-S-S. Are you not from round here?
No, it's my first time in England, I'm afraid. So, could you point out the best way to get to King's Cross Station?
Yes, of course I could. Just give me a second to look it up. Right, well, it looks like you have two options. You could take the 999 bus from the Highgate Village Central Square to Gower Street Underground Station. At Gower Street, take a train to King's Cross. Alternatively, you could walk to Gower Street and get straight on the train going to King's Cross. Go to platform 6 on the Northern Line.
How long would the walk take?
About half an hour or so.
Oh no, that's too long. I don't want to be walking around streets I don't know for half an hour.
Actually, the walk there is not complicated. Just go down Holloway Road until you come across Gower Street. The road, not the station, on your right. The station is about 5 minutes walk up the road on your left.
That does sound easy. It'll be better for me to get some exercise as well. What time do I catch the tube?
There are trains every 5 minutes, so it doesn't really matter what time you get there from that point of view. However, it might be very busy at that time in the morning, so you may want to get there early just in case. Sometimes the trains are too full to take everyone waiting on the platform. If I were you, I'd get there for 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. OK. Well, thank you very much. You've been most helpful.
Before listening to the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
You're welcome. Is there anything else I can do for you?
Actually, yes. How much will it cost me?
Well, you can get a ticket on the bus for £2 and you'll need £11 each way for the train. Unless, that is, you have an international student travel card.
No, I haven't, but I can probably get one before tomorrow.
Well, that's good, because that will cut the cost of travelling right down. The bus will cost £1.40 each way, and the train to Camden Town... Actually, I'm sorry, I was mistaken. There's no discount offered when travelling during morning peak time, so I'm afraid it will still cost you £11. But you'll probably want to return after peak hours, won't you? So your return train ticket might cost you considerably less.
What are off-peak hours then?
Either before 5 o'clock in the afternoon or after 8 o'clock in the evening.
Oh, good. I've no intention of coming back until long after 9, so that'll work out nicely. So, what discount will I get?
Well, your return train journey would only cost you £6.05 with your card. But do make sure you don't forget to buy an international student travel card before 7 a.m. tomorrow.
Oh, I won't forget. In fact, I'll get one today as soon as possible.
Good for you. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Actually, there is. Do you know if I can use my international student card on boats?
Well, if you're thinking of the regular Thames boats that go back and forth between the East and West Bank, then the answer is yes. But you can't use it on the tourist ferries linking the North and South Banks, I'm afraid. A one-way trip east or west of the Thames costs £6, but with your card you'd make a 20% saving and pay only £4.80.
So, £4.80 for the regular ferry. Do the ferries linking the North and South Banks offer sightseeing tours?
Yes, but like I said, there's no discount offered on those, and you can only book using cash or credit card. But I can't book them for you. We don't work with them.
Oh, I see. You wouldn't happen to know the cost of a tour by any chance, would you?
Well, in actual fact, I do, because I took my girlfriend on the trip 3 weeks ago. We bought the half-day tour, and that was £45 each. But I'm told that you can do the whole day for £75.
Well, thank you again. You really have been most helpful.
Don't mention it. Have a nice day now.
That's the end of section 1. You have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear a talk about opportunities for temporary jobs. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen to the first part of the talk and answer questions 11 to 15.
I'd like to welcome you to the presentation. It's nice to see so many of you here, and I hope that everybody ends up with suitable employment as a result of attending. Now, as you know, we at Select Hotel Recruitment are able to offer a range of work at the better hotels in the area. This month is no exception, and I'll take you through some of what we have on offer. The first job is reception assistant, and there are 3 vacancies for this position at the Park Hotel. This is quite a varied job, and in fact I should point out that at certain times of the day it would involve heavy lifting when guests' luggage arrives or perhaps deliveries come in, so bear that in mind when deciding whether to apply for this post. The Park Hotel has quite an international flavour, so you'll need to speak at least 2 foreign languages. Many guests, of course, travel by car, and you may have to take their vehicles around to the car park, so you will need to have a valid driving licence, and you will not be allowed to do the job if you haven't. They also say that basic computer skills such as word processing would be an advantage, although this isn't a requirement. OK, now, the next job is general assistant, and there are 4 vacancies for this at the Avenue Hotel. To be honest, the pay is rather low, but there are compensatory factors that you should bear in mind when considering whether to apply. The hotel will provide you with all your meals while you're working, and they will also train you in all the aspects of the job and then issue you with a certificate, which, of course, could be very valuable to you in the future. Right, the third job on offer is catering assistant, and Hotel 56 are looking for 4 people to fill these vacancies at their smart new premises. As you know, this hotel is popular with exclusive travellers, and so you'll need to wear the distinctive staff uniform, which you're provided with. Don't consider this job unless you're fairly flexible about when you work, as the hotel will require you to work nights for this job, and you'll need to travel to and from the hotel as it's situated just outside the city. Well, that's some basic information about the opportunities we currently have on offer.
Now you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen to the rest of the talk and answer questions 16 to 20.
Now, if you would like to apply for one of these jobs, you'll need to follow our recruitment process. It might seem complicated, but we guarantee the hotels we work with to provide carefully vetted staff. So, the first thing you'll need to do is fill in one of these, a personal information form. It's pretty straightforward and should only take you a few minutes. Once you've done that and handed it in, we'll give you a questionnaire about your skills to do. Again, I don't expect this to take you very long. We then look through the information about you and pass on our recommendations to the relevant hotel. Hopefully you'll be accepted by your chosen hotel. Assuming you are, you will then proceed to the next step of the process and attend a general course of training. This is designed to be helpful and realistic, so an important part of the course is role-play activities. You should have some fun while you learn. OK, and after that, the final step is that you'll be contacted by the hotel you're going to work for, and they'll post you a video about themselves and the work involved. Watching this will constitute further specific training for your job. Well, I hope that's reasonably clear at this stage. Are there any questions on what I've said so far?
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 3. You will hear a conversation between two students and their professor, who is asking them to organise a panel discussion for an upcoming conference. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 23. Listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 23. Come in and sit down, Louise, Stuart. I suppose you're wondering why I've asked you both to come here today.
Well, we've heard rumours.
Forget the rumours. I'll get straight down to business. You know that I'm organising a conference on 17th century English literature? Yes, but... Well, I've arranged for 3 keynote speakers, and I've invited 25 panellists so that we can have 5 panel discussions. And I want you two to organise one of the panel discussions.
But we haven't done that before. Is it like a team presentation?
No, the purpose is quite different. In a team presentation, the group presents agreed-upon views, as you have both done at the end of a group project.
Yes.
Well, in a panel discussion, the purpose is to put forward different views. We want to expose the audience to several different viewpoints at the same session. It can help the audience evaluate their own positions regarding specific issues, and if it's well conducted, it's usually more interesting than a single speaker forum. Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 24 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 24 to 30. And what exactly do we have to do? Well, you'll take the role of leader or moderator and assistant.
Is that like the role of chairman?
Yes, that's it. Sounds daunting. Not at all. I've already done a great deal of the preparation myself. Let me run through the procedure with you. I've singled out an issue that will entail quite some conflict of opinion. I've selected panellists who are well informed and will probably have contradictory points of view. That's very important, you know.
Actually, I feel a bit nervous. How many panellists will there be?
Well, I've invited 5 panellists for each panel because that's probably the maximum number that an inexperienced moderator can handle. But don't worry, I always invite more than we need because you can be sure someone won't be able to make it, so you'll probably just end up with 4, which is a very manageable number. Oh, I see. And I've chosen a moderator. That's you, by the way.
Ah, but Stuart will help, right?
Yes, I'll get on to timekeeping and whatnot shortly. That's where an assistant is indispensable. But what procedure do we follow to conduct the panel discussion? Don't worry, I was just about to say, I've also settled on the format. What is it? There are various formats that can be followed, but I've always found this one to be very effective. Yes? Okay. Make some notes on these guidelines as I run through them, and ask me questions about anything you don't understand. We're ready? Firstly, the moderator introduces the topic and the panellists.
But we don't know who the panellists are.
Don't worry, I've prepared a short biographical introduction for each one of them, and I'll give you that information tomorrow.
Oh, good.
Next, the panellists are given a set amount of time to present their views on the topic. I'd say about 2 minutes each should be sufficient. Now, this is where Stuart's timekeeping is going to be important. You have to keep to the schedule all the way through because the lecture room has only been booked for an hour. How do I indicate when the time is up? You stand off to one side of the panel, either with your back to the audience or hidden from the audience, but in full view of the panel and moderator. You have a digital clock or timer, and you hold up the appropriate number of fingers to give the number of minutes. When the time is up, you make a cutting gesture with your hand.
Ah, but what if the panellists keep talking?
Then that's your job to politely intervene and move on to the next segment, which is the discussion itself. Panellists discuss, ask questions, and react to the opinions of other panel members. This, of course, is their primary function and should occupy about 60% of the allotted time.
Stuart will watch the time, right?
Yes, because you'll be making brief notes.
Why?
Well, when the time's up, the moderator shuts down the debate and provides a summary of the discussion.
Oh, and then it's over?
Well, no. The secondary function of the panel is to answer questions from the audience, and that should take up the remaining 15 to 20 minutes. It's the leader's role to recognise appropriate questions and reject those not related to the subject. During the question period, you must maintain strict control, and this will most likely be the toughest part of the whole job.
Oh dear.
Stuart will of course help you here by ensuring that as many people as possible have a chance to ask their questions, and that no one member of the audience tries to dominate. With about 5 minutes to go, he'll announce that there's time for only a couple more questions, then announce, last question.
And then it's over?
Not quite. You still have to acknowledge the involvement of the panellists and invite the audience to thank them with a round of applause. Should I clap too? Yes, you should both take part in the applause. That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 4. You will hear a lecturer giving the beginning of a talk on the history of British pottery. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Thank you for coming to this series of talks. Before I talk in detail about the experiments and innovations of the British ceramicists, I'd like to give you a summary of the social and manufacturing background in which they lived and worked. So, we're talking about England, or more specifically, the region known as the Midlands, and we need to go back mainly to the 18th century and briefly even earlier to put it in a global context. Now, at that period, the majority of the population, whatever their station in life, as you might say, were dependent for their living, in one way or another, not on the geographical location of where they lived, but on the physical characteristics of the actual land they lived on. This is true whether we're talking about the aristocracy, the owners of great estates who incidentally had no snobbery about the concept of making money from all the reserves of coal or timber or stone on their rolling acres, or the farmers making a fat living from the rich soils. And besides these groups, and the less affluent ones, the deposits of iron ore and lead, the limestone and flint, and the brown and yellow clays also sustained the numerous industries in the area. It's important to recognise that it was already an industrial region and had been so for centuries. There were many Midland trades, some of them indigenous, some of them not. For example, there were immigrants from France who came as early as the late 16th century, and they were producers of glass. A century later, there is plenty of evidence that the variety of trades was enormous. There was brewing in Burton-on-Trent, silk weaving and ribbon making near Coventry, framework knitting around Nottingham, and of course in Cheshire men dug the salt, as we still do nowadays even, which in that era was sent downriver to the estuary of the Mersey. Now, among these well-established trades, one of the oldest of the local crafts was pottery. As you will probably be aware, ceramics has always been a mix of science, design and skill. And a good potter is, in a sense, an experimental chemist, trying out new mixes and glazes and needing to be alert to the impact of changes of temperature on different types of clay. For 200 years, up to the time we are concerned with, potters had been making butter pots and pitchers and patterned plates, using the clay which was plentiful in the area where they lived, in a handful of North Staffordshire villages dotted along the low hills. Now I want to explain a little about the industrial processes which had preceded the great breakthrough in Germany in 1708. That's when the formula for porcelain was discovered, a secret that had been held in China for 1,000 years. In the Midlands, in England as elsewhere, there had basically been two kinds of pottery. The first is still known as earthenware. Now, this was a bit rough and ready, but it was deservedly popular for several reasons. To start with, it was relatively cheap, so it could be used by most households. This was because it could be made from local clay without any complicated processing or added materials. From the potter's point of view, there was another reason for its cheapness. This was that it could be fired in simple ovens or kilns, and at relatively low temperatures, so he didn't have to spend so much money on fuel to achieve the necessary heat. On the other hand, after one firing in the kiln, the problem with earthenware was that it remained porous, so had limited usefulness. So for most purposes, it had to go back in the kiln for a second firing before it became waterproof. And another thing was that it was extremely breakable. I mean, before it had even been sold. I suppose the potter wouldn't have minded so much if people just had to keep coming back for more every time they broke a jug or whatever. But it was very inconvenient because it meant there was a lot of wastage in the course of the manufacturing process. Anyway, for all these reasons, if people could afford it, and that would be all but the very poor, they would buy stoneware, a much tougher product. Now, for this, the potter used a slightly more expensive raw material, which was made by combining clay and flint, and this mixture was fired at a far higher heat, with the result that the ingredients vitrified. That is to say, in effect, the whole thing became glassy. And because of this, it was non-porous, and naturally this was regarded as a great advance. Well, that's the situation in the 18th century. Are there any questions at this stage? OK, so now we can go on to look at the age of innovation.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
It's not a game, it's a rich thing.